welcome to the Motivational Millennial podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Marc Guberti. As a young child, Marc survived a life-threatening illness. As a young millennial, Marc has written 18 books and thousands of blog posts educating millions of people on how to build their own digital marketing empires. Marc is the host of the Breakthrough Success podcast, where he's had guests like Seth Godin, Neil Patel, and Ray Edwards. Marc believes that age is not a limit to success and that you can never be too old or too young to pursue and capture your dreams. Welcome to the show, Marc.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so glad to have you. And for mutual listeners, we had the opportunity to record as guests on the Breakthrough Success podcast. So we're so excited to be interviewing you now.
It's awesome. I can't wait.
So we'd love to hear more about what you're up to right now and what you love about it.
So you mentioned that I've written 18 books now, thousands of blog posts. I started off with the blog about the Boston Red Sox. We might be able to talk about that a little more. What I'm doing right now is I'm organizing a lot of virtual summits. So I just finished the Content Marketing Success Summit. As of this recording, I gathered over 50 speakers to share their content marketing insights, and I got thousands of attendees for the summit. So virtual summits is the next big direction that I'm heading in, because it's a great way to craft legendary experiences for all the attendees, and also to gather all these influencers in one place as they share some of their best information.
What have you learned from hosting the virtual summits? I'm sure it's a massive process, but I wonder if there are a few things that you've learned either from a personal perspective about yourself or from a business perspective by doing those summits.
One of the biggest things I learned that I need to outsource more of the work, because I enjoyed doing the interviews, but there are parts of it where certain processes that I would have rather outsourced. So that's something that I learned. I also learned a lot about content marketing. I mean, no matter how much you know about a topic, you can really expand upon your knowledge. And that's exactly what happened with me with the Content Marketing Success Summit. And I actually calculated that it's a little over 35 hours of insights spread throughout all the sessions. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rewatch all of them and grab all of those insights, because I'm also working on a top secret book. So
Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I'm currently doing.
That's awesome. So how do you think that you personally have grown? I mean, it's so awesome. You're talking about all of this amazing knowledge that you are scooping up and then you're going to share with other people. But how do you think that you've grown through this process?
The way I've grown through this process is, this was one of the biggest projects I've ever pursued. And the ability to accomplish it the way that I accomplish it, it just brings more confidence. And now I feel like pursuing these bigger and better projects, like my next summit, the Productivity Virtual Summit, I want that now to be more successful than the Content Marketing Success Summit. So now, even when I exceed my bar, what I expect of myself, I take some time to enjoy it, 1 to 2 days. And then I'm thinking, okay, how do I raise that bar? So it's constantly raising the bar. And no matter how great the success is, I think this is the big personal development from the summit. No matter how great your success is in any project or area, always look for a way to raise it to the next level.
That's great. And I love that you're saying I took a couple of days to enjoy it, because that's something that a lot of us don't do. When we accomplish something, we're just okay, that's done. And we don't really give ourselves the chance to be holy mackerel, I did that thing. And that's awesome. So you're doing that. And then you're also saying, cool, what's the next challenge? What's the next adventure that I can do?
And just one quick thing also, I only took 1 to 2 days to enjoy it. I feel there are two extremes in most cases. The one where you mentioned where we never take the time to appreciate what we've done. And the other people who harp on that one success. So only take 1 to 2 days to celebrate and then push forward.
I love it. And for the Productivity Summit, what inspired you in your own life to be interested in productivity and to want to share and learn more about it?
I honestly haven't thought of that, why I first got interested in productivity. I think it's we naturally love the idea of getting the same result or doing it slightly better, but in a shorter amount of time. I feel like we all love that. Like, for instance, like schoolwork, like I feel like you enjoy it better, like if you do all of your homework for the day in like 30 minutes versus it taking you 5 hours. So maybe a long time ago, that's when the productivity like that interested me, and I just happened to think of it that way. But regarding the Productivity Virtual Summit, I mean, I learned so much from hosting these virtual summits. I mean, as mentioned, the Content Marketing Success Summit was 35 hours. And the reason I bring that back up is because it was as if I was getting 35 hours of free coaching and free consultations by hosting that virtual summit. So now think about what can happen with productivity. I mean, I have a strong base knowledge already, in my opinion, and obviously it's biased, but now it's going to expand so much more because of all the different people who I'm going to interact with and interview during the Productivity Virtual Summit.
And clearly you have a significant grasp on productivity, given that you've already written 18 books and thousands of blog posts. So I think it sounds like you've already got a pretty good grasp. And
you are an expert, man.
Exactly.
You can own it.
And speaking of the blog, you mentioned wanting to talk more about the Red Sox blog. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the way I got started with blogging was I wrote a blog about the Boston Red Sox. And as a New Yorker, being a Boston Red Sox fan, it's not the best of mixes when you want to interact with other sports fans in your area. So the blog was a way for me to interact with Red Sox fans because New York didn't provide that many for me. So I learned like, okay, I want to promote this so that it reaches as many people as possible so I can interact with more Red Sox fans. And that whole process of let me promote this to reach more people, that developed into my love for social media, content marketing, and business. And that basically led to where I am today in sense the passion. And then it was just a process of me putting in the work every single day, writing all the content, promoting the content, and turning it into what it is today.
And what were some of the challenges that you faced on this journey?
One of the big challenges I faced in the beginning, I mean, I know that this is my last year as a teenager, but one of the big challenges I faced in the beginning of my teenage years was that the age served as a crux in the beginning where people thought I wasn't the expert because, oh, how can this person who is so young be an expert in this topic? But as I put in more work, as I wrote valuable blog posts, I mean, hey, the results are there. So it's less about age and more about how willing you are to provide all this value. So that was one of the big challenges that I faced. And like at certain points, it was like, it hurt the confidence because, you know, I didn't have it built up to where it is now. So being able to grow on Twitter actually helped me out a lot. Like I took the number very seriously in the beginning. So like when I was at like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 followers, it helped out a lot with the confidence. So I would say that was one of the big challenges that I had to face in the beginning, like putting my value out there, putting in all this time, knowing some people would criticize and like not like it. And my age, obviously, at the beginning of the journey. So those are the big challenges I faced.
I'm so interested in something you just said about the number of Twitter followers gave you confidence, because I think so often we hear that young people on social media are always in comparison mode and unhappy because everyone else has more followers than they do, and they just are trying to constantly post for likes and follows. But you said that you really got confidence out of that, and I'm so interested to hear more about that. Would you mind sharing what about seeing that growth gave you the confidence?
You know that you're not just in it all by yourself. You know that people are standing behind your ideas. I mean, I wasn't just posting random stuff on social media. I was posting like all about my passion. Like anytime I wrote blog posts, like I was putting it up there. And being able to get all these followers and see all the engagement, it was like people are reading my content. I mean, little things like a like or a retweet for my content. I mean, I feel like it's different in the traditional sense where you're just posting stuff, hoping it gets liked. But in my case, this was like my whole mission. This was my life work. I mean, obviously that could change as the years go by. But at the time, that was like, I put my heart and soul into the blog post that I produced. And getting that engagement was just very, people are there actually watching it. So that was something that meant a lot to me, especially in the beginning. It still means a lot to me now, but I really needed that pickup in the beginning because, again, like when you're beginning and you get criticized, like your first big critic, someone who like, they don't know you at all, but they criticize you, that's going to have a bigger impact than like right now, if I get criticized by someone, I really don't care who you are. If you criticize me, I just keep marching on. But it was difficult for me to do that in the beginning. Getting the followers to support me and getting that engagement was really helpful in the beginning.
Well, I just really want to acknowledge you and really in all of this, because to jump in and pursue your passion, I mean, I'm really inspired by you right now, because I love your story about how you got into blogging. It's like you followed an original passion and you were really excited about it. And then it led you to this whole other passion, which is really amazing. It's a good testament to actually following the thing that you care about and taking that into your own hands. And that's what you did. And then just to continue when things got hard and, when there was uncertainty. And so for you to be in a place where you've experienced perseverance and the kind of success that comes from perseverance, for anybody at any age, that's a big deal. But it's like, it's so awesome that you've experienced that before even hitting 20, man, because you're like ahead of the game in the sense that whatever comes your way, it's like you've created this foundation where you know that you're going to keep going no matter what comes your way. And that's so awesome.
And Marc, what inspired you to write the first of your 18 books?
Well, I've been writing a lot of blog posts at this point, and I obviously knew at that time that this is something that I wanted to do full time because this was something that I loved. If you love what you work, I mean, that's the perfect formula for success and happiness, in my opinion. So writing the books was a way for me to make revenue from something that I was already passionate about while providing more value. So for instance, my books on like social media and productivity align with the value that people already get from my blog. So it was a perfect fit for my audience, and it was able to be the starting point for this journey where I would generate revenue for my business.
Mm. From all of your guests on the Breakthrough Success podcast, what beliefs or practices have you seen that they have in common, these people who are successful that you're interviewing?
I've seen a lot, like they have systems in place where they do the work. So John Lee Dumas, who I had in my Breakthrough Success, he batches his episodes. So he'll do one day of the month. He'll do 20 interviews on other people's podcasts. He makes sure the interviews are like 15 minutes in length. So I had to modify my episode to like make it like a Breakthrough Success length episode, but also abide to the 15-minute rule. So he'll do all of his interviews in one day. He'll do all of the interviews for his podcast in like the first week. Like it's like 2 specific days in the first week of the month that he'll do all of the interviews. So in 3 days of a 30-day month, he has done all of his EO Fire interviews for the month, and he has done all the interviews where he's getting interviewed for the month. So he has 27 other days to do other things. I've also seen that a lot of people like to read books, which is a habit that I've picked up on a lot since starting the Breakthrough Success podcast. So I would say having systems in place that make action easier and acquiring as much knowledge as possible. Those are the 2 key things that I see all over with Breakthrough Success guests.
You said you love reading. So what are some of the books that have changed your life in some way?
Well, there are a lot of different books that have impacted me, like some of them on a personal development, others on a revenue point. I would just start off with Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie. I mean, like anything written by them is like applicable to this day. So regarding like what books changed your life, I mean, I have several books like in front of me I could recommend, but like just a quick like change your life thing, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie. Those are the 2 who you want to read a lot from.
That's great. And what are some of the other books you've got in front of you?
All right, I've got 5 books in front of me. This was the part we talked about beforehand because I didn't know if we could say all 5. So I'll go through them. So the first one, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. It's a short book. It's one of the few books where like it's more of a storytelling format, but I'm okay with it. Usually I just go deep into like the tactic and how to, but the storytelling is really good in this book and has a lot of key elements to being successful. The second book I have is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. This was actually a wake-up call book where I realized how I need to be working. So like doing less to achieve more. The third book I have is Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. It explores like the mindsets of a lot of artists, some of them here with us now, some of them from hundreds of years ago, like Michelangelo. The other book I have here is Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port. That's a great book on getting a lot of clients. That is like, you really need to have that book to get a lot of people. That it's got a lot of great insights in it, regardless of what business you're in. And lately, I've been doing research on how to make my money work for me. So with that sentiment, Wealth Can't Wait by David Osborne and Paul Morris is the book I recommend for that. Those are all my books that I have for recommendations.
That was awesome. Thank you. It's like, oh, my reading list is expanding, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great combination of sort of practical strategy and also personal social philosophy. There's a lot of good variety there. Thank you. And Marc, what advice would you give to other millennials who are on a path towards fulfillment and success?
So you're on this path right now, and at some point it's going to be dark. At some points it's going to be light, and you're going to know exactly what you need to do. As you continue to invest the time in what you do and be more aware of how you're investing that time, my best advice is to stay persistent and constantly acquire more knowledge, because reading a book like, let's say, Think and Grow Rich, it's not just giving you new ideas for being successful. It's also changing your mind. Like, and not just Think and Grow Rich. Like, if you read personal development books, that's going to create a mindset shift. So what you read, you will naturally get better at. So I would say acquire a lot of knowledge. And when you are on that journey, take the time to celebrate all of your small wins. When you hit a setback, don't let it ruin you. My recommendation also would be to incorporate breaks also. So I'm going to start taking a day off each week just to because when you take a day off each week, it allows you to be more connected during the other 6. So my ultimate recommendation, people say this in many forms, but just enjoy the journey. Know that if you keep putting in the work, if you keep getting smarter and about your work ethic and you keep acquiring knowledge, the success is going to eventually come. You don't know when it's going to come, but it will eventually come.
That is so true. And I think the most important thing for people of all ages in whatever place in your life you are, because there is such a temptation to look at our current situation and say, it's never going to get better. I'm never going to get better. Things aren't going to change in a positive way. And what you just shared about persistence, about having that vision and knowing that it's about the process and it's about the journey, that is truly what so many people need to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and I really appreciated what you were saying about the importance of, being aware of what you're reading and how, if you're reading more personal development books like that, knowledge is going into your mind, is going into your subconscious in some way. And then you mentioned Think and Grow Rich, which it's so interesting, because one of the things that stood out to me about Napoleon Hill's perspective was he was talking about being aware of what we're feeding our subconscious and how our subconscious really informs our intuition. And then when we listen to our intuition, we're more likely to make really good decisions or business decisions. And I don't know, that's so cool that all stood out to me from what you said. What was the big thing that stuck out for you from Think and Grow Rich? I mean, there's so much that's in there, but what was a big takeaway for you?
I think the big takeaway was, it's in the title, Think and Grow Rich. It's just I love the ability that you can change your mindset and then change your future. So in the sense where if you think of yourself being super successful, you can become super successful if you like truly believe it though, because there are some people who say, I think I'm going to be successful, and then they don't do any work, and they're just saying it to joke around, just to say like, oh, well, I think I'm going to be successful. So like, since this guy said it'll happen, like I'm going to be successful now. So you have to like seriously believe with every morsel of your mind that you are going to be successful. And by putting in the work, then you're going to achieve that success.
Right, because your mind shapes the vision that drives your action. So you're constantly working towards that goal.
And if you take action, then you're reaffirming, you're feeding your subconscious, see, I'm successful. See, I can do this. And then it's like it's like reinforces itself.
So Marc, based on your experience, what unique challenges, either internal or external, do you feel that members of the millennial generation face?
Well, I've heard that some people think of us as a generation of entitlement. I feel like part of that for me is just having the mindset that I believe I can accomplish something and I'm pursuing it. So I feel like some people just do feel the sense of entitlement, but for people outside of the millennial realm, you don't want to differentiate. I mean, you want to differentiate entitlement from like, I'm really pursuing this goal. This is my dream. I'm going to make it happen. So I feel like that's one of the differences. Another thing that I do see is just the whole learning curve. That's another part of it. I mean, the learning curve is just ultimately based on how much work you're willing to do. It has nothing to do with years or anything like that. I feel like more people need to be aware that it's not about the years, like how many years you're actually working, because if it takes you like 20 years to be like, let's say, a content marketing expert, then I'm nowhere close. But I would say it's less about the amount of years and more about how much you're putting into every single second. So reducing the time you spend doing things like procrastinating. So like I only watch TV for like 4 hours a week, for instance, because I prefer reading and sharpening my knowledge. So you just have to be able to utilize all the time that you have in order to achieve that level of expertise where it doesn't really matter what your age is, or even if you're a teenager, but people just naturally recognize you as an expert because of all the value that you provide. But with that said, no one's going to ever see all the hours that you spent behind the scenes to provide that value and make it all happen.
Yeah, and you really have to believe in yourself to know that that time spent behind the scene is worth it. Love it. Marc, thank you so much for sharing your passion and your wisdom with us today. Would you mind sharing people where they can find out more about you and your work?
Sure. So on all my social media platforms, it's at Marc Guberti, and Marc has a C, not a K. You can also go to my blog, marcguberti.com/retweets, and you'll be able to get my free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter. All the methods in there are the ones that I use to get over 100 retweets every single day for my content.
Wow. Well, that's incredibly generous.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing with our audience. And as Ivy mentioned at the beginning, definitely check out our conversation with Marc over on the Breakthrough Success podcast. Had a really great time, even though we were having to move rooms a few times due to some crazy background noise we were experiencing.
We persevered.
That's right. We were committed to delivering the knowledge and experience. So yeah, definitely check out Marc's work. And Marc, thank you again for taking the time to be with us today.
My pleasure.
For show notes and previous episodes, or to learn more about our coaching and event offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. That's Millennial, MILLENNIAL. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
Our theme music was composed and performed by our very own Blake Brandis.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is edited by Brittany Felix. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!